The night air was thick with anticipation as Richard Montgomery, CEO of America's largest confectionery empire Sweetscape Industries, locked his office door and headed toward the executive parking garage. The company's quarterly reports had exceeded expectations, and Richard was looking forward to sharing the news with his wife over a late dinner. As he approached his car, fumbling for keys in his Italian leather briefcase, he failed to notice the shadow that detached itself from behind a concrete pillar. "Mr. Montgomery," a voice rasped, mechanically distorted and eerily calm. "Don't turn around." Richard froze, keys dangling from suddenly trembling fingers. "Who are you? What do you want?" "Just your company. For now." Before Richard could process the cryptic response, something pricked his neck. The parking garage began to tilt and spin as darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. His last conscious thought was wondering if the security cameras were still functioning after last week's maintenance. Detective Alexandra Reed stared at the empty desk chair where Richard Montgomery should have been sitting. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the executive parking area of Sweetscape Industries headquarters in Chicago. Overhead, the fluorescent lights hummed, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor where they'd found Montgomery's briefcase and car keys scattered. "When was the last time anyone saw him?" Alex asked, addressing the nervous-looking security manager who kept fidgeting with his tie. 9:47 p.m. according to the elevator camera, the man replied. "He never made it to his car. And before you ask, Detective, our garage security cameras were down for a system upgrade." "Convenient," Alex muttered, bending down to examine a small dark spot on the ground that the forensics team had marked. "What's this?" "Possible injection site residue," said the technician crouched nearby. "We're testing it now." Alex's partner, Detective James Wilkes, approached with his notepad open. "Just spoke with Mrs. Montgomery. She says he called at 9:30, told her he was wrapping up and would be home in 40 minutes. When he didn't show by 11:30, she tried calling. No answer." Alex nodded, her eyes scanning the garage for anything out of place. 20 years on the force had taught her that kidnappings were rarely random, especially when the victim was worth millions. "Any ransom demands?" "Nothing yet," James replied. "But it's still early. Get me a full background on Montgomery. I want to know who benefits from his absence, who might have grudges, and..." The shrill ring of James's phone cut her off. He answered, listened for a moment, then looked at Alex with raised eyebrows. "You're going to want to hear this. The switchboard at Channel 8 News just received a letter." "A letter?" "Addressed to the police and the public. Signed by someone calling themselves the Committee of 21. The Channel 8 newsroom buzzed with activity as Alex and James were escorted to the producer's office. Caroline Ellis, the station's executive producer, looked up from behind her desk, her face tense. "The letter arrived by regular mail this morning," she explained, sliding a clear evidence bag across the desk. Inside was a single sheet of paper with text that appeared to be printed from a basic laser printer. "We've already given the original to forensics, but this is the photocopy they provided." Alex pulled on gloves before picking up the bag, holding it under the light to read. "To the esteemed Chicago Police Department and the concerned citizens who enjoy Sweetscape's products. Mr. Montgomery is our guest. He is unharmed, for now. His safe return depends on Sweetscape Industries meeting our simple demands. 1. Wire transfer of $5 million to an account we will specify. 2. Complete shutdown of production lines for 72 hours. 3. Public admission of quality control failures in their eastern facility. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in consequences beyond Mr. Montgomery's personal safety. We have already placed contaminants in 21 randomly selected Sweetscape products currently on store shelves throughout the Midwest. Only we know which ones. The clock is ticking. The Committee of 21. Alex felt her stomach tighten. This wasn't just a kidnapping, it was corporate terrorism threatening public health. "Has this been reported yet?" she demanded. Caroline shook her head. We were about to run it as breaking news, but your captain called our director and requested a 24-hour hold. Thank God for small favors, James muttered. Alex took a deep breath. We need to contact the FDA immediately, issue a recall for all Sweetscape products, and... Hold on, James interrupted. If we do that, we're revealing our hand. The committee will know we're taking their threat seriously, which might encourage them to escalate. And if we don't, people could die, Alex countered. The ethical dilemma hung in the air between them. Caroline cleared her throat. There's something else. One of our tech interns noticed a watermark when scanning the letter. She pulled up an image on her computer and turned the screen toward them. See this pattern in the background? It's barely visible, but when enhanced. On the screen, a faint grid appeared behind the text, with tiny numbers at specific intersections. Some kind of code. Alex leaned closer. Or map coordinates, James suggested. Back at the precinct, the investigation room was chaos. Maps covered one wall, photos of Richard Montgomery and the Sweetscape executive team another. The captain had called in the FBI, who had set up a command center to coordinate with the FDA on the contamination threat. Alex stood before the evidence board, coffee in hand, trying to make connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information. Sweetscape stock dropped 12% when news of Montgomery's disappearance leaked, an analyst reported. Their main competitor, Delicious Brands, saw a slight uptick. Alex made a note. What about internal threats? Disgruntled employees? They laid off 40 workers at their eastern facility last month after automating the packaging line, James said, scanning through employment records. But nothing stands out beyond the usual exit interview complaints. The door burst open, and a young officer rushed in. Detective Reed. Montgomery's been found. Alex nearly dropped her coffee. Where? Is he alive? Yes, ma'am. A patrol car spotted him walking along Highway 41, disoriented but physically unharmed. He's being brought in now. 30 minutes later, Richard Montgomery sat wrapped in a blanket in the interview room, his hands shaking as he sipped water. His expensive suit was rumpled, his normally impeccable hair disheveled. Medical had cleared him, no serious injuries, though his blood work showed traces of a common sedative. Can you tell us what happened, Mr. Montgomery? Alex asked gently. They kept me blindfolded, he said, voice hoarse. 3 voices, maybe 4. Different accents. They asked questions about production processes, quality control. Specific questions about our corn syrup suppliers and preservative protocols. He paused, swallowing hard. They recorded me admitting to cutting corners on safety testing. Did they force this confession? James asked. They suggested things about my family. Where my wife shops. Where my daughter goes to school. Montgomery's eyes welled with tears. I told them what they wanted to hear. Do you have any idea who they might be? Montgomery shook his head. They wore voice distorters. But they knew things, internal information. Things only someone with access to our systems would know. Alex exchanged glances with James. This wasn't just about money, it was more personal, more targeted. The contamination threat, Alex pressed. Do you think it's real? Montgomery went pale. They showed me vials. Said it was some kind of slow-acting compound that would cause severe gastrointestinal distress. Not lethal, they claimed, but enough to create panic. As if on cue, Alex's phone buzzed with an alert. 3 cases of severe food poisoning had just been reported at Chicago Memorial Hospital. All 3 patients had consumed Sweetscape products. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. The FDA issued an emergency recall of all Sweetscape products across 12 states. News outlets ran constant coverage despite official requests for restraint. Panic buying emptied grocery store shelves as consumers feared contamination of other brands. Alex hadn't been home in 36 hours. She stood in the incident room, staring at the map where they'd plotted the reported illness cases, 17 so far, all non-fatal but serious enough for hospitalization. "There's no pattern," she muttered, tracing lines between incident locations. "It's completely random." "Maybe that's the point," James suggested, bringing her a fresh coffee. "Maximum chaos, minimum predictability." The forensics team had been working around the clock analyzing the recalled products. Their preliminary report lay open on Alex's desk. Traces of a commercial-grade emetic compound had been found in 8 different product samples, carefully injected through the packaging with a fine needle. Professional work, the lead technician had noted. Not amateur hour. The pattern of the watermark on the ransom letter had yielded another clue. When overlaid with a map of Sweetscape's distribution centers, 5 points of intersection emerged. All 5 were locations where security systems had reported brief power outages in the past month, outages too short to trigger major alarms, but long enough to potentially disable security cameras. Alex was about to share this observation with James when her phone rang. The caller ID showed the precinct's front desk. "Detective Reed," she answered. "There's someone here to see you," the desk sergeant said. "Says he has information about the Committee of 21. Won't give his name, won't talk to anyone but you." The man waiting in interview room 3 didn't match Alex's mental image of a conspiracy informant. Mid-50s, neatly dressed in business casual attire, with wire-rimmed glasses and a trimmed gray beard. He could have been an accountant or a high school principal. "Thank you for seeing me, Detective," he said as Alex took a seat across from him. "I understand time is of the essence." "You said you have information about the committee," Alex prompted, recorder running. The man nodded. "I believe I know who they are. Or rather, what they are." He placed a folder on the table. "My name is Daniel Hirsch. I worked for Sweetscape Industries for 22 years as their lead quality assurance manager. Until they fired me 18 months ago." Alex's interest sharpened. "Go on." "I was terminated after filing multiple internal reports about substandard ingredients and collapsed quality protocols at the Eastern facility. Cost-cutting measures that I believed posed health risks." Hirsch's voice remained steady, but his hands clenched. "I tried going to the FDA with my concerns, but Sweetscape's legal team buried me in cease and desist orders and non-disclosure violations." "And you think this committee is connected to your termination?" "Not directly, no. But a month after I was let go, I was approached by a consumer advocacy group. They called themselves Pure Food Initiative. They wanted my documentation, my insider knowledge." Hirsch pushed the folder toward Alex. "I gave them copies of everything. What they did with it afterward, I don't know. I never heard from them again." Alex opened the folder to find meticulous records of inspection failures, emails raising concerns, and finally, termination papers citing violations of company loyalty policies. "Why come forward now?" she asked. Hirsch's expression darkened. "Because despite what they've done, I never wanted people to get hurt. When I saw the news about contaminated products." He trailed off. "This isn't what I intended." As Alex left the interview room, James was waiting with a tablet in hand. "You need to see this," he said, pressing play on a video. It was a live stream from an anonymous account. A figure in a blank white mask sat before a plain background. When it spoke, the voice was the same mechanically distorted one described by Montgomery. "Chicago Police Department, Sweetscape Industries, and citizens of America, your response to our demonstration has been noted. Consider the 17 illnesses a warning shot. We have not deployed the true contaminant yet. That one won't send you to the hospital, it will send you to the morgue. Unless Sweetscape ceases all production immediately and agrees to independent safety inspections, 21 of their products will become delivery mechanisms for justice. You have 24 hours to comply." The video ended, leaving Alex and James staring at a black screen. "We've got tech trying to trace it," James said grimly. But they're bouncing the signal through about a dozen countries. Alex tapped her fingers against the tablet, thinking. This doesn't fit. If they were just activists concerned about food safety, why the elaborate kidnapping? Why not just contaminate products from the start? Maybe the kidnapping was about getting insider information, James suggested. Montgomery said they asked detailed questions about processes and suppliers. Alex nodded slowly. They needed his knowledge to make their threat credible. They needed to know exactly how to compromise the products. A young officer hurried over, holding a printout. Detective Reed, we've got something on those power outages at the distribution centers. Security footage from a convenience store across from the Cincinnati location caught someone entering the center's utility area. Face isn't clear, but... Alex took the grainy printout. Though blurred, she could make out a familiar silhouette, average height, wire-rimmed glasses, trimmed beard. Daniel Hirsch, she murmured. Son of a bitch. The pieces clicked into place. Hirsch's termination, his insider knowledge, his suspiciously timely appearance offering information. But something still didn't add up. The scale of the operation suggested more than one disgruntled ex-employee. James, I need everything on the Pure Food Initiative. And check if any other quality control staff were terminated around the same time as Hirsch. 4 hours later, they had their answer. 5 former Sweetscape employees, all from quality assurance or food safety departments, all terminated within 6 months of each other for raising similar concerns to Hirsch's. And all 5 had connections to an obscene activist organization called Pure Food Initiative, that had been flagged by the FBI for increasingly radical rhetoric on food industry practices. They're not 21 people, Alex realized. The name refers to something else. James nodded. Their manifesto mentions 21 critical failure points in America's food safety system. They see themselves as the solution to those failures. A text alert drew Alex's attention to her phone. The FBI had tracked the livestream's origin to an abandoned office building on the outskirts of the city. SWAT was mobilizing. Let's go, Alex said, grabbing her jacket. The raid yielded a complex setup of computers and laboratory equipment, but no suspects. They had clearly fled just minutes before SWAT arrived. Left behind, however, was a printed manifesto and, more disturbingly, a map marking 21 specific Sweetscape products, their batch numbers, and the stores where they had been placed. They're not bluffing, the FBI agent in charge concluded after reviewing the evidence. Their chemical synthesis equipment is sophisticated. If they've produced what this formula suggests, we're looking at a compound that could cause severe neurological damage. The FDA expanded the recall to cover all potentially affected products, sending agents to specifically targeted stores. Meanwhile, Alex and James focused on tracking the 5 suspects, whose identities they now knew. Financial records showed unusual patterns, large cash withdrawals, canceled leases, disconnected utilities. They're going off the grid, James said. Planning to disappear after making their point. Alex stared at the profile photos of the 5 former employees. Educated professionals who believed they were fighting for public health. Somewhere, their mission had twisted from advocacy to terrorism. They'll want to witness the impact, she said slowly. They'll need to see the results of their work. A thought struck her. The Sweetscape annual shareholders meeting. It's tomorrow morning at their headquarters. All the executives who ignored their warnings will be there. You think they'd show up? That's incredibly risky, James countered. Not if they've already placed their final contaminated products and just need to see the company's public response, Alex reasoned. They don't need to do anything except watch. The following morning, the plaza outside Sweetscape headquarters was filled with protesters, media, and concerned citizens. The shareholders' meeting had been transformed into an emergency press conference to address the contamination crisis. Police and FBI agents blended with the crowd, while Alex and James coordinated from a surveillance van, watching camera feeds scanning for their 5 suspects. Nothing yet, James reported, eyes fixed on facial recognition screens. Maybe they're smarter than, wait. Northwest corner, by the coffee cart. Hirsch. Alex grabbed her radio. All units, suspect identified northwest corner. Gray jacket, blue cap. Do not approach. Repeat, do not approach. He may be watching for his associates. Through binoculars, she observed Hirsch casually sipping coffee, his attention fixed on the podium where Sweetscape executives were preparing to speak. He seemed calm, almost satisfied. There's another one, James said suddenly. Female suspect, east entrance. Anne, confirmed, third suspect by the media trucks. They were positioned strategically around the plaza, maintaining sight lines to each other and the stage. A classic surveillance formation. The company's acting CEO approached the microphone, beginning a carefully scripted statement about commitment to public safety and full cooperation with authorities. Hirsch checked his watch. They're waiting for something, Alex muttered. Some kind of signal or... Her words were cut off by screams from the crowd as a woman collapsed near the stage, convulsing violently. Then another person fell, and another. It's happening now. James shouted into his radio. Medical emergency front of stage. They've released something in the crowd. Alex burst from the van, racing toward the plaza as chaos erupted. People stampeded toward exits while security struggled to maintain order. Through the pandemonium, she spotted Hirsch walking calmly toward a side street, speaking into what looked like a walkie-talkie. FBI. Freeze, she shouted, drawing her weapon. Hirsch turned, unsurprised. His eyes met hers across the distance, and for a moment, neither moved. Then he smiled, not the smirk of a villain, but the sad acknowledgement of someone who believed their cause justified their methods. It's too late, detective, he called back. The 21st face has already been revealed. Before she could respond, a smoke bomb detonated between them, filling the air with thick white clouds. By the time it cleared, Hirsch was gone. In the aftermath, the truth emerged in fragments. The collapse at the press conference had been staged, actors hired to create panic while the real committee members escaped. No additional contaminated products were discovered. The entire operation had been a sophisticated pressure campaign designed to force Sweetscape into safety reforms, a goal they ultimately achieved, as the company announced comprehensive quality control overhauls and independent monitoring. 3 of the 5 committee members were eventually captured, though Hirsch and 1 other remained at large. The trial exposed years of corporate negligence and regulatory failures that had put countless consumers at risk, revelations that sparked congressional hearings and industry-wide reforms. 6 months later, Alex stood in her kitchen, watching a news report about new food safety legislation being dubbed the Committee Act by the media. The anchorwoman spoke of increased whistleblower protections and stricter quality control requirements across the food industry. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Sometimes the most effective monsters are the ones who show us our own reflections. 21-inch. Alex stared at the message, debating whether to report it or simply delete it. The case had changed her, made her question where justice truly resided in a world where corporations could legally endanger public health while those who exposed them were labeled criminals. She had no doubt that somewhere, Daniel Hirsch was watching the same news broadcast, seeing the reforms his desperate methods had finally achieved. Had the ends justified the means? The 17 hospitalized consumers might disagree. The food safety improvements might save thousands in the future. Alex closed the news app and deleted the text message. Some questions had no satisfying answers, only consequences that rippled outward in patterns too complex to fully comprehend. The true face of the monster, perhaps, was neither the committee nor the corporation, but the system that had created them both. Outside her window, people went about their days, buying groceries and trusting labels, unaware of the invisible battles fought over the contents of their shopping carts. The most terrifying monsters, Alex had learned, were the ones hiding in plain sight, wearing business suits, making calculated decisions in boardrooms, or perhaps, typing manifesto pages in ordinary suburban homes. The case file remained open. The final judgment, unwritten.